FNaF Secret of the Mimic has recently been released and it has quickly become a fan favorite game. One of the things I've seen get a huge positive reaction from the fans is the protagonist of this game, Arnold. Arnold is an overworked Fazbear technician who was tasked with going to Murray's costume manor to get technology left behind from Edwin Murray. The game really manages to get you attached to Arnold even if he doesn't say much or his appearance is never shown. Well, he says a lot for a FNaF protagonist, but whatever. However, we don't actually know much about Arnold. We only see less than 10 hours of his life. We don't know much about his personal life, probably because he doesn't really seem to have one because of how much work he does for Fazbear Entertainment. Due to this, fans have started to speculate about who Arnold actually is, and that's what I plan to do today. So join me as we talk about Arnold, I guess. I have two theories I want to go over, and I'll go over them in order of how likely I think they are. But before we can talk about who Arnold truly is, we have to first understand his story. So yeah, I'm basically going to recap Secret of the Mimic, but it's going to have a bit of character analysis thrown in, so it's important, just watch it. We are first introduced to Arnold driving after completing a 36-hour shift for Fazbear Entertainment. On the drive, he gets a call from Dispatch, who acts as the phone guy for this game. He tells Arnold that Fazbear Entertainment has a new job for him, because he is the closest technician in the area. Arnold seems to be in disbelief by this, since just a few seconds ago, he told Dispatch he just worked a 36-hour shift, and he says the only reason he keeps doing so much work for Fazbear Entertainment is because...
No, I'm doing it because you guys keep threatening to dock my pay and repo my...
Keep this in mind since it is going to be important later. Nevertheless, Arnold accepts the job, not like he has much of a choice. The job is relatively simple. A contractor for Fazbear Entertainment named Edwin Murray has gone missing. Due to this, everything he was working on is now property of Fazbear Entertainment, so Arnold has to go in and get the property. Arnold arrives at Murray's costume manor and acquires a data diver, which was snuck in his van in the last job. He enters the building and goes to the security office. Dispatch tells him that he has to turn on the power and upgrade his data diver. Why Fazbear Entertainment couldn't just hack the data diver or whatever, I don't know. He upgrades the data diver and turns on the power, where he may or may not have noticed the corpse of another Fazbear technician stuffed in a suit. He's told by Dispatch upon arriving back at the security office what his real job is. Edwin Murray had actually been working on an endoskeleton that can mimic the actions of characters. It can go into any mascot costume and adapt to the character, playing the role of it perfectly. It was built for Edwin's son, David. But Fazbear Entertainment sees massive potential in this endoskeleton and wants Arnold to get the schematics for it. The only problem is that the endoskeleton has been introduced to some kind of violence, making it murderous, meaning that if it gets its hands on Arnold, it will kill him. However, it would be very difficult for Arnold to actually leave the facility, so his best bet is to get the schematics stored in Edwin's office, and then Fazbear Entertainment could
maybe find a way to probably save your life from it.
Dude, what?
Now, they've already tried to send other technicians in to get the Mimic, but things didn't go very well for them. The way to get to Edwin's office is to upgrade Arnold's data diver to executive permissions. He can do this by finding upgrade stations throughout the location, and this is basically the game, getting the upgrades for the data diver. Arnold first goes to the manager's office where he meets Jackie, an animatronic that tries to kill him. He barely escapes with his life, falling right into the security office. Dispatch talks to him, but right before he does, there's a lot of static, indicating that the Mimic, or a Mimic, is speaking to him, mimicking Dispatch. Arnold then goes to fix an elevator, which may or may not be something he usually does as a technician, to get to the Big Top showroom, to get an upgrade, and he has to face off against Big Top, who would have guessed. After this, Arnold is tasked with building a spring-lock suit to access the horrible Foxy puppet show in the theater. Spring-lock suits are something that Arnold is most likely familiar with as a Fazbear technician. After constructing the suit, he must get inside it. The suit even helps him hide against the Mimic, since it will not recognize him in the suit. So wait, Arnold must get into his suit and play the role of a character, which he does in the puppet show playing the role of the captain. And the main antagonist of this game is a character whose whole shtick is getting into suits and playing the role of the character. And it doesn't even recognize Arnold in the suit. I wonder if this is an intentional parallel between these characters and if there are any more parallels between the characters we can notice in the game. Maybe we should be on the lookout for that. When he enters the theater, Arnold will encounter the White Tiger for the first time. I hate that name, but I can't call him Tiger Rock since technically he isn't called that. Actually, I'm gonna do it anyway. Tiger Rock is not the Mimic, he is something supernatural, most likely possessed by David or his agony, but it doesn't really matter as of now. After beating the puppet show, the show area kind of falls apart and Arnold falls into the doll hospital. Here he meets Dolly, and we learn that in the FNaF universe, Edwin invented recycling.
So I'm
very excited about our next showroom.
Oh shit.
Welcome to the world's first recycling center.
What?
Arnold has to go through the hospital and put trash into the trash chutes. He finds another upgrade station here. Arnold gets stuck in the elevator and has to fix it. and then Dolly jumps in the elevator, so he has to fix it up again. It's here where we learn that the Mimic is actually in Dolly, if that wasn't obvious enough. Once he returns to the office, he is told that he can now access the admin wing, That's where Edwin's office is located. The way to the admin wing is through the warehouse. Upon entering the warehouse, the Mimic will be seen hunting Arnold in a Chica suit, which is a character Arnold may or may not be familiar with. Sneaking through the warehouse, Arnold will enter the horribly designed admin wing level. Getting through that leads to Edwin's office, where the Mimic schematics can be found. Escaping Edwin's office, Arnold must travel through the tunnels. However, he isn't alone. Tiger Rock, who Arnold has been hallucinating for over an hour at this point, is down here as well. Interestingly, he can actually kill Arnold this time, while also seemingly giving him hallucinations of himself, which is kind of weird. Unlike the previous sections of the game, where Arnold must hide in the shadows, he must stay in the light, as Tiger Rock cannot attack him when he's in the light. After getting through the tunnels, Arnold finds himself in the main office for the final time. This is where he has a choice of giving up the data diver or instead executing the parachute.exe. The canon route is most likely executing parachute, but if he gives up the data diver, he will actually be able to leave the factory. Upon leaving, he'll get a call from the real dispatch, revealing that he has been trying to reach Arnold all night, meaning that dispatch has mainly been the Mimic throughout the game. Due to Arnold's confusion, we know that he did not recognize this. After he is fired by dispatch, he is then killed by the Mimic and possesses the prototype Freddy hidden under MCM. If Arnold executes parachute.exe, he will be able to go to a prototype version of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Here, the Mimic will wear an amalgamation of prototype parts that I like to call Prototrap, because it's funny. He plays FNaF 1 in reverse, and it's revealed that the Mimic that has been communicating with him all night is actually F10N4, the first version of the Mimic nicknamed M1. It is either possessed by Fiona, Edwin's wife, or M1 thinks she is Fiona. It doesn't really matter to Arnold's story. She tells him to go to Edwin's house to find Edwin to repair M2, who's the Mimic that has been chasing him all night. Arnold goes to Edwin's house and has to find tapes that he must watch to enter Edwin's home office. Upon going there, he will find no Edwin, a tape on the wall implying he died. After this, Arnold activates something known as Cradle, and then M2 shows up without a suit for the first time. Arnold must escape Murray's Custom Manor now burning around him. He escapes to his van. Unfortunately, the Mimic catches up with him and crashes the van, taking the data diver, leaving Arnold alive but in a burning car. The Mimic leaves and Arnold passes out. Whether or not he lived is up for interpretation. Arnold can also get the secret storytime ending. However, this ending doesn't really add anything to Arnold's story outside of him helping to save the Mimic and him liking to find things, I guess, since he has to find all the collectibles. Now that we have recapped Arnold's story, let's do a bit of character analysis. As you may remember, I called out that Arnie parallels the Mimic with how he wears a spring-locked suit and takes up the role of that character, much like how the Mimic takes up the roles of the characters it wears. I also asked if Arnold may parallel the Mimic in more ways, and obviously I think he does. First of all, the spring-locked suit is not the only role Arnold plays in the game. He plays the role of a customer, an MCM employee, and at the end of the game, the role of Edwin himself, or at least F10 seems to think he's Edwin in her final dialogue. The helper thing also calls him like Mr. Murray and stuff. This is something that F10 even calls out after Arnold activates parachute.
Who are you deep down inside? Another worker bee? A bumbling bee? Perhaps a busy bee? In many ways, tonight has been a comedy of errors. A jester would suit you well. Or a bunny, running from danger, scared and stupid, searching for a hole to hide in. No, you did everything I asked up to this point. You were an obedient dog, a good dog. Then you bit the hand that fed you.
So both Arnie and the Mimic take up roles throughout the game, a very interesting parallel. I've seen many people say that the Mimic's arc in this game is sort of finding his own identity, and I agree, and I also think that in a way, this is Arnold's character arc as well. Not in the sense of finding his preferred role like the Mimic, but in the sense of learning not to sort of just blindly follow Fazbear Entertainment's orders. Throughout the game, Arnold is almost as robotic as the animatronics he hides from, just doing his work, pretty much. Now, obviously, he doesn't have much of a choice, but at the end of the game, he does have a choice between continuing to follow Fazbear Entertainment's orders, or take matters into his own hands by activating parachute.exe. And if he chooses to continue following orders, he is punished by being fired, killed by the Mimic, and then possessing Freddy. Arnold even kind of says this, saying,
Fazbear Entertainment will hold you personally responsible for lost or stolen property.
What?
What did you expect would happen?
I did everything you told me to!
This is why I think it makes more sense if Arnold survived the parachute ending, since it would be kind of weird for him to die if he did the right thing. I guess you could argue he does still continue to follow orders with how he goes to Edwin's house when told to by F10, but I disagree, because first of all, he literally had no choice, and also wanting to stop the Mimic is probably something he would want to do by now. So I think his arc of still not following orders is kind of still intact. Or I guess you could say he wasn't just blindly following them in that case, I don't know. It's unclear wonder why exactly Arnold would not just give up the data diver since he has been doing everything else he was told to all night. I mean, even F10 calls this out.
Arnold, why? Why would you come down here? You should have given me what I wanted and gone home. You did everything else that was asked of you. Why'd you change your heart?
It's my question too.
Why don't you trust me?
There was never a singular moment before this where we see Arnold reflect, he just kind of does it. I think it was most likely something that had been bubbling up for a long time, and after the events of the game, where Fazbear Entertainment literally sends him somewhere where he almost got killed multiple times, he decides to go against them. He also has been awake for like 41 hours, and is most likely running on pure adrenaline, so he probably wasn't thinking straight. But what else Arnold's story shows us is that Fazbear Entertainment sucks even back in the 1970s. I think as much as he has like an interesting character arc, his story is really just to show us like, oh, this is what it's like working for a company like Fazbear Entertainment, and that's always been a theme of the series, you know, since FNaF 1 even. I mean, the night guards die all the time, and Fazbear Entertainment actively covers it up, and one of the founders is literally a serial child killer. So really his story just further shows us that Fazbear Entertainment was always horrible. But hey, that's just my interpretation of Arnold's story and character arc, and I think it is backed up within the game itself. If you've seen Gibby's video about the themes of Seeker of the Mimic, which I think is really good and I agree with for the most part, I think this fits in pretty well with it, but please let me know what you think in the comments. Okay, so now that the character analysis of Arnold is out of the way, let's talk about the theories now, which was probably why you clicked on the video in the first place. But before we get into all that, I just want to ask you guys to subscribe because we're trying to hit 3.5k before the end of the year, and subscribing will be a massive help. But only if you enjoy the video, and if you want to unsubscribe at any time, you can. With that, let's get into our first theory. This is perhaps the most popular theory for who Arnold is, and it has some solid evidence. There are quite a few parallels between the story of Cassie and Arnold. They are both sent to do a task, and throughout the majority of that task, they are talking with the Mimic, who's pretending to be someone they know. They also both fall through a vent, which is pretty minor, but still. They also both use a similar device. Arnold uses a data diver, and Cassie a phas wrench. They are absolutely designed to be similar. Another parallel is that at the end of the parachute ending, Arnold escapes the Mimic through an elevator, and in Ruin, Cassie escapes the Mimic using an elevator. Also, the Mimic tries to reach through the elevator with its hand, it's not able to reach through. That's, you know, a very intentional parallel. There's probably more parallels as well, but these are just the main ones. There's also the fact that Arnold has a Spring Bonnie bobblehead in his van, which could perhaps imply that he likes the character. And we know that Cassie's dad's favorite character is Bonnie. However, for a couple reasons, Arnold is most likely not Cassie's dad. First of all, it is heavily implied that Cassie's dad is the Bonnie bully from FNaF 4, with the Bonnie mask appearing in Princess Quest 4 and Help Wanted 2. It is said it looks familiar to the player. However, Arnold never sees this mask in Secret of the Mimic, which you think they would include if they were the same character. And I find it very unlikely that Mike and his friends are in their 20s during FNaF 4. Also, I find it unlikely that Arnold would continue working for Fazbear Entertainment for like 50 years after Secret of the Mimic, since if he survived he'd be undoubtedly fired, or most likely not continue working with Fazbear Entertainment. It's also implied that Cassie's dad is named Jeremy, probably Jeremy from Help Wanted, and if you want to know why, make sure to check out my video about Jeremy Fitzgerald and Fritz Smith, since I talk about it there. Furthermore, we know that Cassie's dad was a Fazbear technician, and in a way, Cassie is sort of a technician, since she fixes the animatronics in Ruin. It's kind of a stretch, but stay with me. And Arnold is a technician, so they could be like a family of technicians. Also, for the past 2 games, we have played as a member of Cassie's family, and we have seen them deal with the Mimic. Hell, Ruin was our introduction to the Mimic in the games, so it would make sense for a prequel game all about the Mimic to be about another member of Cassie's family. And also, in an old version of the opening dialogue, Arnold says,
What family? My parents are dead. My wife left me last year. I haven't seen my kid for...
This outright states that Arnold has a kid. However, it is unused, so it might no longer be canon to his character. However, the fact that it was originally a part of it is interesting. I suppose you could say that since Arnold never mentioned a child as a reason he does the workload that Fazbear Entertainment gives him, that could imply he doesn't have a kid.
No, I'm doing it because you guys keep threatening to dock my pay and repo my truck.
However, I don't really think so, since he could be worried about his pay potentially being docked because he has a kid that he has to provide for. He just never mentions it because Dispatch clearly wouldn't care. So overall, I think it's a very solid theory and one that I believe. Now let's talk about our next theory, which is one that I find to be very interesting. This was a theory that I was actually pushing for since before the game came out. Before we can talk about this theory, we must first talk about David's death. We don't actually get direct confirmation on how David dies. It would be very easy to say that he dies by being hit in a van like he does in Tales. However, in the books, Fiona dies during childbirth, but she doesn't in the games, so we kinda have to figure out how David died ourselves. Unfortunately, like I said, we do not get direct confirmation, but we do get some hints. In the game, you can find a tape where Edwin talks about a playground he built for David.
Look, I get your concerns. I do, but they're all just groundless. This is the perfect spot for David's playground. I can watch him play while I'm loading and unloading freight, and he'll be under watch at all times out there. The loading dock is like 200 feet away, and there's a fence and everything. I know you're my lawyer and all, but there's no regulation that says I can't have it there, so just get off my back. Besides, David loves the new slide. It'll be fine.
So, Edwin is told that building David's playground near the loading dock is a bad idea, but he doesn't listen, and we kind of know the whole thing, so Edwin's neglect led to David's death. I wonder if David's death has anything to do with the loading dock, where vans are likely to be. Also, in the 4th Murray family tape at the end of the game, David is brought to his playground for the first time, and the final shot of this tape is David's ball. And the shot kind of lingers on it for a while. As we know, in the books, David got hit by a van chasing his ball. I wonder if this could be foreshadowing. Also, in the final tape, Edwin is at David's birthday party, and he says that David is on the playground.
Okay, everyone hide. Fiona, go get him. I left him out at the playground.
We can actually go to David's birthday in the game, and it's still set up, and we get a message that says due to recent events, the party will no longer be held. So it seems that David most likely died on his 5th birthday, and he was last seen on the playground near the loading dock, which was called out to Edwin as dangerous, and the final shot of tape 4 is David's ball. David died in the books chasing the ball and got hit by a van. Vans are on loading docks, so David probably died in a very similar way in the games, as he did in the books, being hit by a van. Also, a bunch of YouTubers were given like a gift basket from Steel Wool, and this came with 2 vans, Arnold's van and another white van that never appears in the game. Why would they include this if it wasn't relevant to the game? Why does no one talk about this? So it seems very likely that David died by being hit by a van. How does that tie back to Arnold? Well, the very first scene of the game is him driving a van, and he says that he hasn't slept in 36 hours. He says he can barely keep his eyes open. As we know, you shouldn't drive if you're tired because it can lead to car accidents. David probably died in a car accident, as we just talked about earlier, so there could definitely be a connection there. It could definitely be like foreshadowing. So here's kind of what I'm thinking under this theory. It's possible that Arnold was like bringing stuff to MCM on David's birthday, and he was tired because he was overworked, just like he is at the start of the game, and then he accidentally hit David. And then he must have either painted over his van or they gave him a new van after he hit them, since the van that seems to have hit David was white while Arnold's is blue. This can explain why Arnold hallucinates Tiger Rock before properly encountering him in the basement. As we know, David likes the tiger plush, so he might have been holding on to it when he was hit. Maybe the hallucinations are Arnold's guilt creeping up on him, especially since he is literally in the place where he killed David. Hell, maybe the Tiger Rock boss in general never happens and it's only Arnold's guilt. Or it's David/his agony coming for him in particular, since as far as I'm aware, he has never actually mentioned any of the mail we can find in the game. Also, and this is a minor point, but David objectively has parallels to the bite victim from FNaF 4. Not only do their bedrooms look similar, but David has a favorite plush, like the crying child, and they both die in an accident, with both of them seeming to possess a version of their favorite plush. The reason I bring this up is because the main protagonist of the original FNaF story is Michael Afton, the one who killed the crying child, and he feels immense guilt over it. Could Arnold parallel Mike, both being protagonists who feel guilt after accidentally killing a child? Mike was even a technician in Sister Location, just like Arnold is in Secret of the Mimic. Also in Sister Location, Michael kinda also has a choice of following Baby's orders or going to the private room. However, unlike Arnold, he chooses to keep following orders because, it's his sister. So that could just be another parallel between the characters, showing how, they have similar situations they're in, because they kind of have like a similar history, but, they're different people and make different choices. There's also that one part where F10 kind of talks about like, oh, why didn't you trust me? Which is very similar to what Baby says in Sister Location.
You did everything else that was asked of you. Why'd you change your heart?
It's my question too.
Why don't you trust me?
Why didn't you trust me? Why didn't you trust me? Why didn't you believe me?
So, it might be an intentional parallel there. It's a bit of a stretch, them paralleling each other, but I guess it is a possibility. The final thing I want to say is that perhaps the storytime ending could be Arnold redeeming himself, since in this ending we revert the Mimic back to the state of being David. So Arnold is pretty much bringing back the boy he killed in the first place. Now, there are definitely some problems with this theory. The major one being that Arnold, like, never mentions this, and neither does Dispatch, but I doubt he would give a shit. Why wouldn't Arnold mention it if, you know, he killed a fucking kid at this place that he's going to do a job? The only idea I can come up with is that Arnold obviously just doesn't want to talk about it. I guess there could also be maybe, like, repressed memories stuff, but I mean, if that's the case, then it's really weird that, like, he never, like, fully remembers. That would be really bad storytelling. It also has been, like, 4 years, so I guess you could say he kind of forgot or, like, moved on. I don't think so. Maybe that's not a good idea. I don't know. Maybe you guys can come up with better ideas in the comments. And also, there is compelling evidence that M1 killed David, which I will link in the description to the Twitter thread that talks about it. So, you know, it's definitely possible that M1 killed David instead of Arnold. So overall, what do I think of the theory? Well, I actually think I really like it, but I will say that if it is true, it's kind of weird that, you know, it's never elaborated on. I think kind of the narrative would be a little bit worse if it is true, but I do kind of like the concept of it. I don't know, it's confusing. It's obviously weaker than him being Cassie's grandfather, but I mean, I could see it being the case, but I wouldn't say I believe it right now. But I do think it's pretty sensible and a valid theory. And with those two theories out of the way, I think we can finally come to an end. I definitely think these are interesting, but I'm really only confident in Arnold being Cassie's grandfather. I just want to talk about the Arnold killing David theory because I thought it was interesting, and it made for a good thumbnail, you know. Let me know what you think in the comments, and make sure to subscribe if you're new here, and I'll see you guys in the next video.